Voting is a civic duty. Let's register on the electoral list. This is a message from Equinoxe television.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. First, our major stories. Faced with growing calls for President Paul Biya to step aside and not stand for re-election, the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement Party comes out to condemn what it qualifies as manipulation and attempts to destabilize the nation. According to the Secretary General of the CPDM party, Jean Kwete, these outings are intended to create an atmosphere of fear, tension and panic. Away from that, Cameroon's inability to optimize its natural potentials for economic growth and social well-being of the population has again been brought to the limelight as Cameroonians rush to purchase imported rice being auctioned by the Ministry of Trade and Commerce. Observers say the government's failure to develop and expand rice farms in Yagua, Ndo and Tonga accounts for the high cost and shortage of locally produced rice. Those are major stories. Stay with us for greater details. Thank you so much for always choosing Equinoxe television, and for presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. At least 30 youths have been arrested and a huge quantity of drugs seized by security elements during a surprise raid that took place at Bayangi, a quarter in Makia neighborhood, Douala 2 subdivision. Reports say the raid comes after several complaints by local inhabitants on the sale of hard drugs in the vicinity. Greater details with Smart Chikan Gabriel.
A surprise raid by the security forces from the Judicial Police Station at the Bayangi quarter in Makia, Douala 2 subdivision. Marijuana, and at least 30 youths found consuming the hard drugs were arrested. The outing of the anti-gang from the Judicial Police Station came after the governor of the littoral region received information about the return of the illegal activity at the Bayangi quarter, which was once demolished by authorities. Acting on the instructions from the governor, the regional delegate of national security, Eve Marie Ondwa, will immediately dispatch a team that surprised these consumers on the spot. Local authorities have vowed never to relent protecting the population who always fall victims after these young men finish consuming their drugs. All those arrested have been taken behind bars, waiting for justice to take its course.
Smart Chikan Gabriel reporting there. The Foundation to Protect Consumers in Cameroon, known as FOCAFO, once more advises Cameroonians to decline from the consumption of sachet whiskey, whose production and commercialization has intensified despite a joint ministerial ban signed in 2014. In a country where corruption is the accelerator towards the regime's 2035 emergence vision, consumer rights defenders warn Cameroonians who continuously consume this whiskey on its health ramifications. Innocent Aze has greater details.
Despite several ministerial and administrative arretes banning the sale and consumption of sachet whiskey, the production and commercialization in cities of the Republic of Cameroon persist. In the city of Douala, Cameroon's economic capital, for instance, sachet whiskey is more of a celebrity among other commercialized products. They are found in stores, on trays of hawkers in different brands with high alcoholic volume, very dangerous to one's life. Consumers neglect these and advance it is cheaper compared to beer. With a sachet of 100 francs, I gain more satisfaction compared to a bottle of beer sold at 700 francs. A sachet of this bullet whiskey is equivalent to 2 or 3 bottles of beer. Consumers' rights protectors remind and caution Cameroonians to desist from the consumption of sachet whiskey, whose production quality is doubtful. Thus,
les boissons spiritueuses ne doivent plus être conditionnées.
A threat to human life, especially when the spirit is mixed with alcohol.
Et met en mal la santé du consommateur.
A joint ministerial ban signed in 2014, notably by the Ministers of Trade, Public Health and Mines, Industries and Technological Development, orders producers to empty their stock within 2 years. Surprisingly enough, the injunction seemed not to have been respected till date, evidenced by the circulation of all sorts of brands in the Cameroonian economy. It is disturbing, especially when these hot drinks have an alcoholic rate of over 40%. It is imperative to enforce orders and protect the health and well-being of citizens. Unfortunately, the reverse is true. In a bid to help matters, the senior divisional officer for the Mayo-Danai division in the Far North region started the new year with the banning of sachet whiskey within his area of jurisdiction. How it is wished other administrative authorities across Cameroon not only emulate the move, but truly enforce the measure in collaboration with the ministers concerned in order to accomplish their responsibility of promoting health and protecting lives of Cameroonians.
And now to our major lead story. Economists in Cameroon have joined the government to urgently revamp abandoned rice projects in the country. This, according to them, will lead to food sufficiency in the country at a moment when Cameroonians have been seen fighting, or let's say scrambling, to buy rice at cheaper rates. Annabella is the lady on that story.
The promotional sale of a 50-kilogram bag of rice at 15,000 francs instead of 22,000 francs has gotten average Cameroonians in major cities scrambling to have their share. This rush for rice sold at a low price depicts the misery Cameroonians have been going through just to have something to eat.
The government selling rice at the price of 17,000 francs it's solving a momentary problem, but creating a future problem.
A recent study by UNICEF indicates that 90% of the Cameroonian population eats rice at least once a week. But why import rice into Cameroon at billions of francs CFA? Onyagwa, Ndop, Marwakuseri and Tonga are ecological zones favorable for the production of rice.
Government to permanently solve that, they have to revamp the production of rice in the places like Ndop, in places like Tonga and Yagwa.
In a country like Cameroon, where at least 40% of the population live below the poverty line and spend 1/3 of their income on food, the authorities should consider revamping the agri-sector, especially rice cultivation and commercialization.
And how do they have to do that? The government has to invest in modern farming infrastructure. They are going to do irrigation, improve road networks. Some caterpillars are being packed there in the south region and they are needed by the farmers. The government equally needs to offer financial support and incentive.
Going by the bishops of Cameroon, in their most recent message to the political class, it is scandalous that a nation like Cameroon, which has been blessed naturally with diverse and rich gastronomy, Cameroonians should be fighting to get grains of rice just so they can feed their families.
How can we explain the fact that 65 years after independence, our development can guarantee basic human rights, such as the right to food?
The time is now more than ever before for the government to revamp organs such as Semri in Yagua, Sederim in Sancho, plus Ndop and Tonga rice projects so Cameroonians can have access and eat rice, which seems to be one of the last food options.
Staff Lady Annabella reporting there. There is no hope for any form of efficient energy supply in Cameroon in 2025. With the same causes producing the same results, the huge debts owed energy suppliers by annual shortfalls in electric energy supply, epileptic functioning of thermal plants, the poor management of existing dams, and among other things, have maintained an unending disruption in energy supply, more especially in the southern interconnection. We have greater details with Fomi Armstrong-Sander.
There is no hope per se for a change in electric energy supply in Cameroon in 2025. Cameroonians are expected to live with the same epileptic supply as was the case in 2024, or even worse, going by a January 14th press release from the Minister of Water and Energies, Gaston Elundu Esomba. The 6 regions within the southern interconnection are experiencing disruption in supply, and the government of Cameroon says it is due to a production shortfall of about 70 megawatts at the Songlulu and Edea hydropower stations. This, according to the government of Cameroon, is as a result of low filling of reservoir dams during the 2024 dry season, with a 2 billion cubic meters deficit. At the same time, production at the Menvele hydro plant dropped from 200 megawatts to 35 megawatts, according to the government. The above reasons are further compounded by the shutdown of the Kribi and Dibamba thermal power stations since September 2024. As a social consequence, enterprises will suffer as the government plans to ration electricity by switching them off during high demand periods. The energy expert says similar decentralized energy projects can be more effective and efficient. Among other measures, the government plans to focus on the optimization of existing generation plants by making their full capacities available, the boosting of fuel supplies to thermal power stations on the southern interconnection grid, among others. The minister also announced that the government is working on negotiations in view of settling Ineos' debt with its many suppliers.
From Armstrong-Sander reporting there. Faced with growing calls for President Paul Biya to step aside and not stand for re-election, the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement comes out to condemn what it qualifies as manipulation and attempts to destabilize the nation. The party is taking measures to counter the pressure from the opposition, civil society actors and the church. Babila Jonathan read through the release of the CPDM Central Committee Secretary General and now tells us more.
The Cameroon People's Democratic Movement (CPDM) political party decries what it calls hateful, diabolic and untruthful speeches aimed at denigrating the party's national president and head of state Paul Biya in order to discredit the government and institutions, particularly those managing the electoral process. CPDM Secretary General Jean Kwete condemns the dissemination of messages to destabilize and demonize the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement and its statutory candidate for the forthcoming presidential election. According to Jean Kwete, such messages are intended to create and maintain a generalized climate of fear, tension, panic, worry and insecurity among the population in this presidential election year, confuse supporters of the party, and by so doing preparing Cameroonians for post-election violence should President Paul Biya emerge victorious. Faced with what the party qualifies as an anti-CPDM regime campaign, Jean Kwete has instructed heads of the regional and divisional permanent delegations of the Central Committee, section and subsection presidents and leaders of grassroots committees of the party to enhance ties with the population, the monitoring of the voter registration process via dissuasion and persuasion. He urges Cameroonians to remain vigilant and to see the future with assurance and optimism.
Over to our health page, Cameroon's healthcare system is considered by many as being fragile A case, for example, is the economic capital city Douala, where the situation is even much more complicated as most of these hospitals have limited personnel, others still using outdated equipment, with some buildings in a dilapidated state. A case in point is the New Bell District Hospital, where the Minister of Public Health, Dr. Manauda Malachi, paid a surprise visit. Mala Glory gives us more insight on the visit of the minister.
The health workers of the New Bell District Hospital were taken unaware on Monday, 14 January 2025. The Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malachi, during his unexpected visit at the health unit, discovered that some health workers were absent from their duty. A shocking situation which the director in response said the hospital has a problem of limited personnel. The minister's visit to the economic capital city Douala is to evaluate and regulate the health sector.
We have run this project, and we just do an evaluation to have difficulties and to have the forces of our project. And
he stopped at the district hospital. Dr. Manauda Malachi was disappointed at the physical structure of the health unit, which is gradually wearing out, and the fact that it do not have improved sanitation. Thus compromising the ability to provide safe health care and presenting serious health risk to those seeking treatment.
Mais l'aspect hygiène et salubrité reste encore à refaire ici.
Recommendations were made to the hospital authorities as the minister promises to return to Douala for its supervision.
Out of our national frontiers in South Africa, rescuers continue their operations to bring out survivors among hundreds of miners who were working illegally in an abandoned shaft and have been trapped in debris for months. More than 100 are believed to have died of starvation or dehydration. Seri Chakutio with our front page roundup.
South African police say they have pulled 36 bodies and 82 survivors from a gold mine in 2 days of operations. They added that the survivors will face illegal mining and immigration charges. On Monday, 27 more were brought out from deep underground. Police began laying siege to the mine about 150 kilometers southwest of Johannesburg in the town of Tifontein in August and cut off food and water for months to force the miners to the surface to arrest them as part of a crackdown on illegal mining. Rescue operations, which involve the use of a metal cage to recover survivors and bodies from a mine shaped more than 2 kilometers underground, will continue for days. Typically, illegal mining takes place in mines that have been abandoned by companies because they are no longer commercially valuable on a large scale. Elsewhere, the Palestinian Islamic movement Hamas and its ally Islamic Jihad have approved the agreement being discussed in Doha for a truce and the release of hostages in the Gaza Strip. Two Palestinian sources close to the discussion say this was the final solution.
For this first part of the news, Talking Point is up next. My guest tonight on Talking Point is an educationist. He's known as Dr. Nick NGWANYAM, and we'll be discussing the fallen educational standards in Cameroon. Good evening, Doctor. It's a pleasure having you on Talking Point tonight. Can you give us an understanding of the fallen educational standards in Cameroon today? Why is the performance of pupils right up to the tertiary level dropping? Recently, we saw some graduates being bashed on social media for speaking poor English. Is there a problem with our educational system?
Yes, it's very unfortunate, really, because while we are saying that speaking English is not a measure of intelligence, but again, you cannot say that you are a lecturer or a professor in a university and you are teaching thousands of students, and you cannot express yourself. If you can't express yourself, you shouldn't be there. Because I remember in those days, if you didn't do well in the English language, you were not admitted in high school in Kasbambili. And to have passed the GCE meant that you also had the English language as a pass, and that you were able to use the language. You could write the language, you could speak it, and you could communicate. You could hold a conversation in that language. And for people who probably are going to be doing other things, if they don't speak the English very well, we don't hold them to task. But it's inconceivable that a supposed Anglophone lecturer or professor who is teaching in a university cannot express himself. That it's a no-go area, and honestly, it's just part of the problem. It's just part of the problem, because when you cannot express yourself very well, especially in a country where the school system is not beefed up by laboratories, where students just have to listen to, and students don't read, people don't read, they just probably depend on the teacher. When that teacher is not coming across very clearly, there certainly is a problem. I'm sure we've dealt enough with that, but if you can permit me, let me go ahead to explain this thing about the falling standards of education. So, like we said, when we are talking about education, we are looking at a couple of things. What is education? Why is it important? How do we? Why is it important? And how do we go about it so that we have a good education? When we don't get these things clearly, when the vision, the understanding, and the purpose of education is not properly defined, we are bound to make a lot of mistakes. We are bound to be riding a wrong horse, and we will not even know that we went wrong because we didn't even define what our track was. So when you send a child to school, that child should go to school and learn the theories and the principles about how things operate, principles of physics, principles of economics, biology, chemistry, language, philosophy, I don't know what. Then a good chunk of what students should do, practical work, is what has been absent. We just came back from a graduation at the University of Boya, where Professor Halley, the dean in charge of the Faculty of Medicine, was complaining so bitterly because he doesn't have a teaching hospital. There is no way you can teach medical doctors and you don't have a teaching hospital.
Dr. Nick, let's look at the issue of sexual transmissible marks and also the use of artificial intelligence. With the case of AI, some students are reported to use this tool to write their report. The fact that some students refuse to think out of the box, how can it possibly affect their performance in the job market?
Yes. So, we're talking about sexually transmitted marks. Let us just say that if children understood what education is and what people are looking at the end of the day, sexually transmitted marks will not exist. What do I mean? If we had gotten to a place like America where you brandish your certificate, nobody looks at it. When you go to America with a certificate, bring the best certificate, color it as much as you want. When you show them, tell them it's a PhD plus or PhD whatever, they don't care. They ask you one question: what can you do? So if you can transmit the capacity to do sexually, okay, that's your trouble. But I tell you, it is not done sexually. You do it yourself. DIY, do it yourself. So learn to do things yourself. All those certificates, even I'm telling you, it's all bullshit. All those certificates is bullshit. What matters is what can you do. Have the certificate, but the certificate should be a proof of what you can do. When you have a certificate and you cannot do, you fail big time. So, and then people who are using AI, you are using AI to write your thesis. AI, when you use AI is a very good tool. AI you have a question, you go to AI throws all the answers at you and so on. Then use your own mind, use your own words, and then rechurn it, restate it in your own words, restate it even in your own mother tongue, so that you understand. You could say it in your own words. Then when you don't do that exercise and you just copy and paste AI, you are just a very dumb fellow, and you'll be given a certificate that is worth nothing. So AI is great, but AI is there to help you. AI does not replace your thinking.
Do you see any risk of social unrest if schools continue to train future jobless Cameroonians?
This is it. You know, a lot of us will sit because people don't think. People are not proactive, then things just come and then you think it's witchcraft. It's not witchcraft. You can project that, you know, in the next 5 years or 10 years I have this problem. If I don't correct it, this is what I will get. And there are always telltale signs. You know, we've been witnessing children running out of the country, those that are taking the risk to die at sea, die in Sahara, you know, go through the jungles of Colombia or whatever, and are being maltreated left, forward, center, some eaten by lions and tigers. Okay, we have seen the violence that, you know, this thing called microbe. We have seen how full our prisons are. We've seen that people are leaving universities and are on motorcycles, and we are taking that for granted. They are just managing to get by. But when their numbers will continue to pile up, they will reach a point where violence will take over. You saw what happened in Kenya. So how do you stop the violence? You don't stop violence by building more prisons. You don't stop violence by training and recruiting and training more policemen and gendarmes. That's not how you stop crime in your community. You stop violence and crime by feeding the young people, by meeting their needs, by making sure that they can. A young man, when he goes to school, he is sure that when he reaches 24, 25, he can get married like anyone else, that he can have a job or create himself a job. Then he and his wife working together, they will have a successful family, and at 35 they could see that they are growing, and by 40 they are millionaires. That is what children want. But we have done our country in a way that, you know, we have put in the minds of young people that everybody has to work in the civil service and everybody has to write a concours. It's all wrong. There are 350,000 people working for the civil service now, and it's all full. And besides, they're not even effective. You like to increase to 1,000 to a billion. It changes nothing. What we need to do is to give our youth the skills to be able to help themselves. Give them the skills and create an enabling environment where they can express their talents and express themselves and grow. Help youths to put money in their pocket. That is the thing. If you don't do that, because if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you have the physiological needs in the level 1, which is food, water, and a couple of other things, then the second one is safety and security, the third is love, the fourth is ego, and the fifth is self-actualization. If you don't help people to climb up this ladder of needs, they will come after you.
From what you are saying, the whole system should be brought to a halt and everything changed from square one. To add to that, are you convinced that the import substitution can solve the problem of rising unemployment in this country?
President Paul Biya is talking of import substitution and eventual emergence by 2035. It only happens when you train your own youths to be able to solve your own problems. There's no way you can bring Chinese and French and Lebanese and so on into a country and think that they will solve your problem. They cannot solve your problem. They are there for their economic interest. You effectively transfer technology only when you have trained your own children to have those skills that you bring foreigners to give you. So the sooner we learn that that is the way to do it and begin to bring up all our youths, so that at least 80% of our youths are trained in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, agriculture, leadership, entrepreneurship, financial intelligence, emotional intelligence, all these things packaged together. Once we begin to do that, we'll get it right. And when we are talking about STEM education, let us go over it again. Yes, you need to have, train the children, give them the theories and so on, but that's 30 to 40%. But 60% of the time should be spent in laboratories, using their hands and their heads to prove the theories that they learned in classroom, and to see how things actually work. Children should know how cars are built, how planes work, how rice machines work, how tractors work. They should learn how perfume is made. They should learn how alcohol is brewed. They should learn how all these big machines work, because at the end of the day, those things look very complicated, but it boils down to basic science and principles. So children should learn that, should be able to replicate them, should be able to buy a Tesla car, bring it home, put it down, scatter it, study the parts. That's reverse engineering. Build it back, copy it, make their own, and it works. That means we can be able to build our own agricultural machines. We have to get to a point where we build the machines that we need in Cameroon and Africa. That is what will change our story.
Dr. Nick NGWANYAM, thank you so much for your time. And that's it for this edition of the 6 p.m. Primetime Newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you so much for your keen attention. See you tomorrow, same time, God willing. Bye-bye for now.